What's up, Fit Fat Dad Nation? So today we are tackling a very interesting subject. Today we are taking on the mental battlefield that is claiming casualties daily. What am I talking about? I am talking about this phenomenon that is called hustle culture. You know what I'm talking about. You can sleep when you're dead, grind away, hard work pays off all the time, sacrifice family, these types of thoughts that are in our heads. And as dads, we're left of how should we do these things? Should we tackle these things? How do I balance this versus family time? So we're going to dig into that. We're going to break apart some of the things that are out there that you're seeing on social media, and we'll give our opinion on that and break out some of these myths. Co-host Jay couldn't be here today. He's on spring break with the family. So, hey, man, we'll miss you, but hey, enjoy the time with your family. But I'm bringing in a very special guest, longtime friend of mine, Jansen Tidmore. Jansen, he's a guy that's doing it right, man. He's crushing it in the boardroom. He's killing it in his work, and he's keeping his family together and making time. He is the CEO of Jeffco Economic Development, and that's just not his first city that he's been in where he's really brought up the economy and brought in a lot of businesses. So we'll get him to talk a little bit about his secrets for how he hustles and is successful in his career and became a CEO of his own company, and how he's leading teams and how he's doing it the right way and making sure that he has time for his family. So I'm really excited to bring him in and get his input. We're going to have a lot of fun today. But before we do, I wanted to check in. Last time we talked about this company, Magic Mind. Let me make sure I got it here. Right here that said, hey man, we get tired dads. You guys should give us a try. And so I gave it a 7-day trial. Now I'm on day 21. And that's 7 through 14. Hey, I was really consuming a lot of caffeine, and it really helped me cut back on my caffeine. So that was a real big success. But this is a mental performance shot. And let me tell you where it really kicked in and helped me. I know not everywhere in the country observes daylight savings time, but we just went through daylight savings time. And hey, we missed an hour, and I really want that hour of sleep back, and I haven't adjusted. So what have I been doing? Get up in the morning, try to get in my routine, felt really groggy. I've kicked in the old Magic Mind mental performance shot, and I'm telling you, man, things got back on track very quickly. So if you guys haven't already tried it, I'm going to take one right now. I'm feeling a little groggy myself. Doesn't taste like grass. That's Magic Mind. So right now you can get 20% off if you go to magicmind.com/fitfatdad20. Again, that's magicmind.com/fitfatdad20. You can get 20% off on their products, and hey, you'll be glad that you did. So we are going to go ahead and get into this episode. I'm really excited. Going to introduce Jansen. Jansen, how are you, buddy?
You know, it's been busy. March and spring, it's the collective of the kiddo activities and keeping us bouncing all around Colorado. How about yourself, man? You're looking a lot more fit than fat right now.
Well, you know, Jay the other day said that, he's the one that's going to carry the other half of the fit fat dad thing, man. But he's always been the fit one. So I guess it's good that maybe karma's coming around. Yeah, so it's good. It's we had a viral meme not too long ago. It's dads yet again missing out on beach season, but hey, tan fat looks better than pasty fat. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm still
like
pasty.
The tan fat.
Yeah, but hey, man, once we get that tan fat, you get a little, I don't know, maybe it just adds a little definition. But, dude, I'm happy to have you. I think I know you're going to add a lot of value in today's show. But to kick this off, we're not going to do a standard interview format. No, those are boring. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk, to kick things off, hustle culture, some of the myths that are out there on social media right now that everybody seems to want to follow. And what we're going to do is I'm going to set a timer, and we'll talk through 5 hustle culture, we'll call them myths or viral trends that are going out right now. I'm going to give you, let me pull it up here. I'll give you 60 seconds on the clock. Maybe. I'm bad at timers, but I'll give you a good 57 seconds on each one of these.
A bad example to my wife. She's going to ask to borrow this and shut me up every time after 60 seconds.
When the buzzer goes off, we're going to be done. All right. So number 1 right? We all know Jocko Willink and what Jocko Willink's putting out there. Former Navy SEAL, he's got a lot of good information, but he's got this 4 a.m. club obsession that social media is really taking and maybe putting in a little bit different direction. But basically what it is Jocko is posting, hey, he's waking up at 4:30 every morning on his Instagram, and he's getting to the hustle. So JT, is the 4 a.m. club legit, or is it just photographic evidence of sleep deprivation? Your 60 seconds starts now.
Look. He's a Navy SEAL and very well accomplished. I would never say anything poor about that, or even to downgrade his routine. I think that the biggest thing that we see with social media and many of these different topics is the fact that we take every little piece of the plan and want to think that it's almost biblical, that we have to follow it to a T. And at the underlying items he's really talking about is consistency. Get your sleep, have self-discipline, form those habits, think about what you're doing and be fit. And you don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. to do that. You can wake up at 6 a.m. You can wake up at 7 a.m. And so the 4 a.m. is as much of a marketing ploy as it is anything of start your day before the day begins. But let's not forget that if you're waking up at 4 a.m., you're probably in bed by 8 p.m. And there's a lot that you're missing after the fact there with kids and activities as well. And so underlying principles of the 4 a.m. club, I'm all about it. No way in heck I'm waking up at 4 a.m. Give me to 6 or 7 to do those same habits.
That's impressive. You act like you've gone on the fast timer before. Loved everything you said. Loved everything you said. I've got to admit, I tried the 4 a.m. club not too long ago. And funny story about the 4 a.m. club. Do you know what happened to me? I fell asleep at my son's basketball practice. Like, no doubt about it. Like, what better way to be a dad than just absolutely falling asleep at basketball practice watching your kid? Wife never lets me forget about it. But I love the point you made about it's not about actually getting up at 4 a.m. I think he even says pick a time and be consistent in that. But the other point you made is you're probably going to bed at 8 p.m. I know when I tried the 4 a.m. club, I was still going to bed at like 11 midnight. So it didn't really work out.
Not working. That defeats the purpose of that.
No, man. Sleep when you're dead. You're going to die real quick. All right. Myth number 2. Another Navy SEAL, David Goggins. You either love him or you hate him, but he's got a stay hard mentality that is overrunning social media right now. The man runs ultra marathons with broken feet and makes us think that success requires suffering. JT, what's the difference between productive discomfort and just being miserable? Your 60 seconds starts now.
Yeah, I really struggle with this one. And I think it goes back to, no pain, no gain. We've heard all these things that we've been told through the years, but, there is a limit to that. And so, again, as I look at some of the key principles, mental toughness, relentless discipline, embracing adversity, self-reflection, accountability, no one's disagreeing with any of those points. But like we do so often in our culture, so often in our worlds, we like to play on these edges of the extreme and not really take it to the practical middle. And I think what we're seeing with this stay hard is that, quite frankly, you get a lot more clicks when you make it sound so crazy. Running a marathon with a broken foot, doing something with a torn knee, hurting yourself and stretching that even further. I'm sorry, that's just plain stupid. That's not mental toughness. That's not grit. What that's saying is that I really don't care about my long-term health for this short-term gain, and I'm more of a long-termer.
And you had seconds to spare.
I thought that was the code that I was running out of time there.
You know it, man. You got it. Man, so let me ask you this. Has there ever been a time maybe in your career or that you noticed somebody when pushing too hard actually caused you to fail?
Oh, 100%. And you see it where you lose sight of what your real goal is. Like I tell my team, and we talk about the why often, because if all we focus on is getting to the finish line and we forget why we're even running the race, then the whole thing loses focus, loses sight, and it's not the outcomes we intended. If it's just to get to the finish line, if it's to say I did it, but you lose the purpose along the way, I think that's as fruitless as anything you can put your time and effort towards.
Yeah, no doubt, man. You mentioned it. At its core, these things are great. And there are people out there that need that level of motivation to actually go and do something. But I think I know there's a solid core of men out there who are already grinding and working hard, and then they hear that and they're like, man, If I'm not broken, then I'm not doing it right. But you put so much at risk. I mean, you put your health at risk. You put being a good dad and father. There's so many competing priorities that we as dads have to work through. And hey, if you're broken, you can't you can't work through any of those. I mean, physically, and I think that's maybe the trophy there, right? We all want to be this physical Greek god that works out and looks strong, but at the end of the day, I mean, that's only a piece of it. You got so much more to have to offer. All right, let's keep it going, man. All right, so we're going to move on to myth number 3, the hustle harder hashtag movement. All right, man. So I'm just going to ditch the timer on this one because we're going to need to kind of spend a little bit of moment here. But the hashtag rise and grind, hashtag no days off. There's probably a billion other hashtags that have infected our thinking like a virus, brother. And I know in your career and everywhere that you've built economic frameworks for entire communities, all while being a dad, raising kids, among everything else and all the pressures that you have on. So what happens from your perspective to a dad when he takes no mental days off?
Yeah, and specifically around these hashtags as you're looking, what I find is that the individuals that want to push these items and push these narratives on us are usually the ones that are accomplishing the least. We had the whole LinkedIn joke back in, the LinkedIn post of the day. And it's like, people sort of call it like, that didn't really happen. Like, I mean, the LinkedIn stories just got so crazy. And
I'm excited to announce
these hustle hard. But what it does is, I think, what it does is it's triggering to us that this is the norm and these aren't the anomalies, and that these are accessible and that these are real. But what's real is the fact that you have to have pace, that you have to have purpose, and that you have to take incremental steps to really get to those long-term goals and objectives. And quite frankly, what we push on burnout culture, what we push on 18 and 20-hour workdays is counterproductive. It's counterproductive to a quality of life. It's counterproductive to outcomes for your business and your personal and your career growth. I've never seen it work well. I've never seen people that take it to that extreme where it actually works, because again, you lose all sight of what your actual goals are. You lose sight of what you're trying to accomplish, and you usually burn a lot of bridges along the way, because people see right through that and they kind of roll their eyes. And I know I do. And look, I see it all over our social media tags. And there's a part of me that has empathy and says, what are you really going through? What are you trying to show out there on that post? What are you trying to put out there forward facing? And what's really are you hiding behind and not wanting to say? And so to me, these are far more triggers that there's something deeper going on, and rarely has anything to do with their entrepreneurial venture, with their career trajectory, with what they're really working on in either their personal or their professional lives.
Yeah, it's almost like people trying to find their way, or they're needing that attention. No doubt they're needing that attention to have somebody validate what they're doing. It's none of it's really ever long term. I do. So there's have you heard of I know you have, right? The CEO's miracle morning and all the things CEOs accomplish before 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. I'm like, well, man, what do these guys ever sleep? Or they must not have families, or they've got all these other things going on for them. I think there was a viral trend about Mark Wahlberg about getting up at 2 a.m. and he works out and then go plays 18 holes of golf, walking, probably wearing a weighted vest, and then he goes and prepares breakfast, recovery, all these things. And it sounds great. It sounds, wow, that's amazing. And then it's like making use of every minute. And I love having a routine, and I love being consistent in that routine. I even get motivated in the morning. Like, that's my favorite time, because there is a lot of truth at the core of a lot of these things, but it's all about sustainability, man, like, in consistency. And if you can't do that, then there's no sense. You're going to be worse off than you were. And then if you're sacrificing the things that truly matter, being a quality human, being a good husband, father, for feeding an ego, being, if you're narcissistic, whatever, like it defeats the whole purpose, man.
And specifically, when we talk about those celebrities, we talk about those CEOs, we often forget the other side of that equation of, oh, do they have a personal chef? Do they have somebody that's picking up their dry cleaning? Who's dropping the kids off at soccer and taking this one to theater and making sure that they're at the choir concert? It's great if you can have a routine, if you have somebody or if you have a group in a company that's able to handle the mundane day-to-day task of what a family has to do. That's often so left out of these conversations. And it's a reality that 99.9% of us can't just leave out, because we got to make the lunch for the kids. We got to have the breakfast. We got to make sure that they're getting from A to B to C to D on all their extracurriculars. And quite frankly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I highly doubt that there's that much more productivity I could put into a day at what I'm losing from making sure that the family and the homestead's taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we said 5 in the upfront, but I like where we're at with 3. But is there any hustle culture myth or viral trend going out that we didn't cover that you see or hits in your community?
I think there's one other thing, and I remind my kids of this often, and it may be a little bit controversial, but I tell them often that the greatest lie ever told is that you can be whatever you want to be. And the reality to me is that you can be wherever your natural talents meet your work ethic. And I think so often we want to be something that we've seen out there or that we've seen in a movie or that we've heard. It's always really easy to show in sports, but it happens in our professional careers as well. And I highly encourage people, stop chasing other people's dreams, stop chasing the talents that others have, tap into what you do really, really well and work really, really hard at that. And that's where you're going to see dreams come true. I think that's where you're going to see the fruits of your labor pay off. And stop buying into this. You can be whatever you want to be. I don't believe it. And I think we've seen quite a bit of marketing, quite a bit of social media around that. And I think it sells a false narrative that just can't be achieved.
Yeah, that is so good. That is so wise. I mean, I look at it like this to agree with that is we all have a purpose, but most of the reality is that we spend an enormous amount of time going the opposite direction of trying to figure out what our purpose is. But we all have God-given abilities and strengths, but we live in this comparison world where JT may have a skill that I don't have. JT may be able to talk, better in boardrooms, has the it factor that I don't have, and we really long and get jealous for those types of things when, hey, if we just pour into what naturally we were given and blessed with, as you said, things would pay off a lot easier. So I really love what you said there. So that was fun. We are going to close up the fastest figure kind of PTI like myth busting, and we're going to move into our next segment. We have a
And gee, thank you. My girls always roll their eyes at me on that one. So I appreciate your validation. I
Hey.
don't get that response from them.
dad to dad. We got to validate that, brother. You know what I'm saying? Like this is what we're here for, right? And everybody listening on the phone, if you're a dad, you know what we're talking about, man. That ain't nobody giving you credit. So us dads got to come together and give each other credit.
Yeah, I feel the eye rolls from upstairs right now at me.
When they listen to this, you can just the cheese is gonna come, man. Corn coming out of the back of the TV. That's what we used to do every time we see a corny commercial. We'd put it there. Or I guess the new thing, speaking of social media, nice try, Diddy. There we go.
Yeah, nice.
Nice try, Diddy.
Oh, that's the new OK Boomer.
That's okay, Boomer. All right. Well, before we get too sidetracked, we're going to do something a little bit different here. We actually had one of our callers leave us a nice little voicemail. Bear with me here because technology is not my skill, but we're going to go through it with it. All right. So.
Hey, this is Houston from Dothan. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller, big fan of the show. As a fellow fit fat dad, I've got a question about this whole mental toughness thing. Yeah, so I'm following all these hustle culture accounts, getting up at 5 a.m., working out, working 12-hour days, getting the kids home, fed in bed, going back to work until, time to go to bed. So, I'll do all that and I still feel like I'm failing. I know my wife needs more time from me and more intentionality from me. My kids, even asked me yesterday if I remember how to play anymore. So I feel like I'm doing all this stuff, and if I don't schedule out, maximize every 15-minute window of the day, then I won't get it all done. And my kid asked me that, really hit me hard. So What am I missing here?
All right, Houston bringing in that real talk. Jansen, as a dad yourself, what would you say to Houston?
Yeah, man, I think you're facing what many of us are is how do we balance our career and our family, and how do you make the most of it, and in a world that's constantly telling us we've got to multitask, and quite frankly, when we're not multitasking, we feel guilty that we're not doing so. Um, Buddy, what I would tell you is again, get back to the basics. Look at your career goals, look at your family goals, and start taking those mapping that you're doing on your day to day and start mapping it for your life and saying, here's what I prioritize and why. And I know for me, like as I started looking at my career, and I could tell you early on, I did much of that. We had 2 young kids at the house, and 4 or 5 days a week, I'd go back to the office from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. And I said, there's got to be a change, because I was working to work, and you really work and try to build that life and that career so that you can provide for your family and be with your family. And quite frankly, if you start missing that part of the equation, the other doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so find ways that you can find that balance. When I made that change, when I made that shift in career, when I changed my work habits, I found out that guess what? I really wasn't that much less productive. In fact, I made more intentional movements. I made more intentional decisions, and I got further ahead than I was when I was going there at 3 a.m. I was making so many careless errors because I was tired and running too fast. So keep in focus that we do this because of our families. We do this because of our kids. We do this because of our wives. Find ways to make that the career work for your family, not your family work for your career.
Man, that's great. I'm going to follow that. I don't know that it's worth following that because you pretty much nailed it, knocked it out of the park. I would put it this way, Houston. I would say with everything, a season. And there's a season to grind, and there's a season where you have no choice but to put in the work, where everybody's depending on you to do these things, and you've just got to come through. I mean, we sign up for that a lot of the times. But you can't always do that, because it is this constant battle. I face it internally I want to be the best at everything I do. We know that's impossible, but it's that constant pull between you want to be successful in your career. You want to be successful when you go to the gym. You want to be a successful father. You want to be a successful husband. You want to be successful to your friends. Can't do it. Can't do it. You can be okay at a lot of things, but you're going to lose your way. So to the point that JT, man, the focus is your family, and you got to do what it takes to support your family, and you got to know when to push on the accelerator pedal and go hard, but you also need when to come off of that and really focus on your family.
G, it brings up an interesting topic and conversation that I've had around many tables of, the 3 pillars of life or of your personal is career, family, and fitness and or health. And I've often been told, people say you can have all 3. In my experience and in most of the conversations that I have, you can usually do 2 well. Doing all 3, I have not seen anyone be able to do well. And so when you look, and I think you mentioned about those phases and those different parts of your life and where you're at in your career path. I know there's been times where my fitness and career could be a little bit more on the front burner. I can tell you in these later years, we're middle-aged now. That hurts, G, but we're middle-aged now. I mean, it's family and career. Fitness, 100% is what ends up on the back burner for me. It just, no matter how much I want it, no matter how much I try to put and prioritize around it, something comes up in family and career that doesn't allow me to do it. And then I know at some point that'll shift again, and it'll be all family and fitness, or all career and family. And, that 3-legged pillar, that 3 pillars that you've heard, have you talked about that much, and that balance of you kind of got to pick 2 because 3 are impossible?
Yeah, I mean, we call it a 3-legged stool, but it's the same principle, right? Like that is a really tough thing. And you can argue over which one is probably the most important and sets the stage for everything else. whether people believe it or not, that's why I call it kind of fit, kind of fat, right? Because we're always between the two. And you even mentioned earlier, like, hey, you look leaner than you were. Man, I didn't realize that I was a complete fat arse prior. I mean, like, and I was lost in a different season of life. But yeah, man, I mean, and those are the three arenas that I think everybody really tries to keep intact. And it's like, if you go too deep into one, you're going to lose focus on the other. And the thing about family, especially kids, and you won't get back that time, especially when they're young. Yeah. So you're trading something else for time that you'll never get back, and that's the sad reality. I mean, yeah, things may seem important in the job right now, but I always try to take a pause in the heat of whatever's going on at work, and I'm like, man, will this matter a year from now, right? Will this actually even matter a week from now? And that's the advantage of all the things that we have going on with the combination of in-person and remote work. We have more meetings than we could have ever imagined. That, hey, people forget really easy on stuff these days. It's not like it used to be in the old school days where you were held to the fire. Not saying that that's an excuse, but there's just a lot more clutter. People, a lot more spacey in what they remember these days. So there's a little more grace and forgiveness there, I feel like. So anyways, appreciate you, Houston.
100%.
JT, thanks for your input there. We are going to wind down our call-in segment. If you like that, drop a comment, engage a little bit. If you thought it was corny, then maybe you should call in and we'll put you on the show too. But we will get into what really everybody showed up here for, JT, is to talk about in quarter three, real life stories that you have about your career in mental toughness. So we'll take a little break and we'll come right back. All right, guys, welcome back. Q3. So we're going to talk about real life stories that you probably haven't heard on Instagram. I don't know. Some of yours out there went viral socially, but we're going to frame this as the stories Instagram won't tell you. JT, let's drop the filters, literally and figuratively. Mental toughness is not pretty, especially everything we've talked about when you're trying to progress on the three pillars, family, fitness, career path. But what I want to do is talk through some of the toughest moments in your professional career, what happened and how did real mental toughness, not the Instagram version, get you through it. And you mentioned something in the work that you do. It's Jansen versus 600. And I was like, what does that actually mean? 600 angry neighbors. I mean, like, that sounds extremely tough. Before we go there, I do want to hear more about that. There's a lighter story out there that actually does have some mental toughness involved, because you face some tough times after it. But in a previous life, doing economic development in another city, you have quite an interesting story. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, 100%. You know, for those that aren't familiar with economic development, downtown development, the type of work I do, you know, what we really are is community developers. We care about our neighborhoods, we care about our towns, our cities, and we just happen to believe that you really build that and grow that through access to quality jobs, and we're constantly trying to create those jobs. And you know, I was in my hometown of Dothan, working for the Dothan Downtown Redevelopment Authority. And so when you're a downtown, what's the number one thing you got to do? You got to bring people downtown. You got to bring them down to eat and shop and play and enjoy that great experience. And so two things you need to know about Dothan. It's the peanut capital of the world, and very, very proud of that. And because of that, we have peanuts and nuts all over the town that we are proud to display in various forms and artistic abilities. And so what did we want to do? We wanted to have the nut drop downtown for New Year's one year. And so our big 12-foot peanut hanging from a crane right there in the middle of our downtown. And what better thing than to count down and to drop that nut than to do a balloon drop for the kiddos to splash around and have some fun. And well, a picture of our balloon drop and our nut drop was taken from a particular angle, and let's just say that Dongs Over Dothan was formed, and this image went viral within the minutes, and you know, media picked it up. It made it to Tosh.0, national headlines for little old Dothan on our first ever New Year's Eve nut drop, because guess what was right at the bottom of that balloon that didn't quite look like a bag of balloons? Well, it was the peanut dropping out of it. And so I thought it was quite funny, G. I thought it was funny. It was one of those that is very honest assessment. But when you're in a public facing position, when media takes it, when it makes national headlines, when it goes through social media and gets shared hundreds of thousands of times, not everyone finds the humor in that. Not everyone thinks that it's great that Dothan was getting that kind of attention. And so what does it turn to? Oh my goodness, look at these idiots. They can't do anything right. Heads should roll. This guy should be fired. It was crazy. You had the mayor the next day showing his pictures of the balloon drop to say, hey, it didn't really look like that. This isn't so bad. But the outpouring of comments and let me tell you, that has been, oh my gosh, has it been 10 years? And I get pictures every New Year still.
Oh, I know.
That come through my text threads and social media. And don't forget DOD, Dongs Over Dothan.
I've been a part of those threads and laugh every time. And I don't know how you forget about it, but I don't think I ever knew that it was called the nut drop. So the irony in all of this.
New Year's Eve nut drop.
It makes you want, is it still called the nut drop, or did they go complete 180 on?
Oh, it's canceled. It's done. It's over. It no longer exists.
That was the original cancel culture for good right. God, man, that is wild. That story is absolutely. At no point, I gotta know. At no point did it ever come up like, hey, like even in the name, like this may be something.
Well, there's a little tongue in cheek to that. I mean, when you're the peanut capital of the world, but it was the angle of that balloon drop. And this is the same bag that hundreds of people use. And I mean, if you saw the picture and you search it, you may throw it out there on there. I mean, it's just, so I would say the wrong angle at the wrong time. Some would say the right angle at the right time. I mean, it's just one of those. And it's like people that came to us in the press. And let me tell you, we had to talk about this thing for months. I was like, let's be realistic here. Let's be practical here. It is a picture from an angle. What else are you supposed to do? The bag of balloons is the bag of balloons. The peanut hanging from a crane is the peanut hanging from the crane. You can go out and take photos all day long, but I mean, we had to turn a lot of time and energy and attention to this because for everyone that found it funny, there was another person that was really fighting mad about it and just thought it was just the most incompetent move ever. And the reality is there's not a thing you could do about it. This is just one of those things you have to let roll off. But guess what? We couldn't. For months we had to talk about it, and we still get to year after year.
And then we can laugh on it now. I guess I got to ask the stupid question. Is that bad pub is better than no pub at all type of deal?
There was some of that conversation after the fact of, dang, we should have thrown a logo and a tagline of Visit Downtown Dothan on it so that we could have played off the viralness of it. That was one of those learning curves of in the moment, in the heat of it, we're sitting there, we're at it's like a Frank Sinatra Rat Pack themed New Year's party that we're hosting downtown. And all of a sudden the phones start going off and we're all looking, it's like, oh my goodness, get it down. So we had lost control of the viral nature of it. We should have capitalized. And I think 10 years later, people now know how to capitalize when you go viral. That was the missed opportunity, is that we didn't get to put any of our branding on it. And there's probably people that would absolutely hate that. But now you see the image and you really don't know the context. I would have loved to have had Visit Downtown Dothan on there that gets to go out every single year with this, because then you get that play on it. But in the moment, that wasn't even a thought. That didn't even cross our mind. So it was a missed opportunity because the publicity was fantastic. I mean, we were on Tosh.0, and this was back when Tosh was hot and everybody was watching it. We were getting national headlines. We were getting retweeted out by some of the funniest channels. Just like those palm trees that get lit up in Florida. We were on the same level of that as that meme out there. And we didn't get any branding behind it. I do regret that, but again, in the moment, it never even crossed our mind.
Wow. Hey man, well, it worked out for you, right? But I know, because you mentioned it on the upfront, it wasn't all fun and games. I know coming in, probably after everything's settled, but there's probably a lot of, let's call them elders of Dothan, Alabama, that were not pleased with that made it very uncomfortable for you. So let's pour into that. How did you have to get yourself mentally geared up after all the laughs were had to actually now deal with the damage?
I think that's what's so interesting. And I mean, call it, what we are in the middle of the Bible Belt down there, and the level of being offended, and the calls of like, what idiots and incompetency. Like people just literally think you're just that dumb. And it, that's hard to reconcile with. That's hard to kind of face of like, hey, like you can't even kind of cut away the practical application of this. You think I'm just the most incompetent person ever and that I should be fired. And you completely ignore this body of work and all this effort, or really the core purpose of bringing people downtown and bringing community together. And it's like it's a real disconnect between how people see their town and their communities, and those that are working in it day in day out. I mean, we had to have conversation with the city, we had to have conversation with the commissioners and the mayor and others. Like the fact that you had to go through all these hoops and all these discussions and do all this damage control over something that A, really wasn't that preventable, and B, truly isn't that big of a deal, that wears on you. And then, it kind of comes back to our section earlier about asking our why. Like, it's like, why am I doing this? Why am I even putting myself out there to take this level of scrutiny from people that have no idea who I am, what I do, and why I do it? That wears on you. And you couple that with the fact that in what I do, you already have dozens of other battles that you're facing. And so those enemies, those people that are trying to get you to, they leverage this against you and leverage this in the public meetings and leverage this in the letters. And it's one of those things that you really don't have a defense for. It's like, wait, do I really have to put a defense out there? We got to have a conversation about this picture. Like, let's talk about the project at hand. Let's talk about what we're trying to accomplish over here. No. This is being thrown in your face. If he can't even do this right, how can we talk to him about doing this?
Yeah. And hey, man, kudos on you for overcoming that and spinning it in the direction that you needed to. But you have people that are chirping at you daily. I want to go back to JT Jansen versus 600. Talk to me actually what that means, and then explain a little bit of how tough of. I can't imagine 600 angry people.
So again, I think economic development is so oftenly misunderstood, and people, they make reference about why we do what we do and who we protect and why we protect it. And in this day and era, projects, and when I talk about projects, I'm usually talking about manufacturing facilities, aerospace, big flex buildings, because for the everyday person, that's a warehouse. They look at it, they see warehouse. I know what happens inside of there is far more than just a warehouse. And every single time we want to put companies and create these jobs, inevitably there's neighborhoods that don't want that near them. There's neighborhoods that want to keep that a place where they walk their dog. They want to keep that a place where they get to hang out. And this is private property. And so it's the EDCs, it's the economic developers. We're the ones that go and talk about why this is important. And so just for those that aren't familiar with these processes, when you're bringing a company in, when you're bringing a building out of the ground, you have to go through a series of things with your planning board, with your city or your county commissioners. And so there are public hearings every step along the way, multiple of them. And then there are votes by these different governing boards. And for most projects, there's 2 to 3 public votes. Well, our companies, our industry leaders, they know that this group of rooms, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it gets up to 200, 400, 600 people that are very, very passionate. And they have every right to be passionate about what's happening around them. But that passion often turns to anger, and there's only one outcome, and that's no build. NIMBYism has that word, not in my backyard. I don't want this here. There is no way to negotiate it. Well, businesses are business. They're not going to get up and talk in favor of this. They pay the EDC to do this. They have us there to do that. And so I'll sit through 8 hours. There was one that we just did that was 8 hours one day, 5 hours the next day, hundreds of comments about why this is the worst project in the world. And then there's Jansen that gets to stand up and talk about why this is a good project and why we should support it. And I'm vilified. I mean, hands down vilified. He's getting kickbacks. He's getting this. He's getting that. He doesn't care about us. He's trying to poison our kids. Literally, these crazy, crazy things are said, all untrue. I often kid for all these kickbacks people talk about and all this money that's happening under the table. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, because I haven't once got invited to that table. I haven't gotten one time that kickback to me. So I don't know. I'm doing something wrong in that field, especially as many times as I get accused of it. But I'm going to tell you, man, sitting in a room of, these are my neighbors too. Most of them live just down the road from me or just a couple blocks over. These are your community members. These are the people that you're going to church with, that your kids are playing with. And guess what? You're public enemy number one, because there's no one else willing to talk. There's no one else willing to stand up and have these conversations. There's nobody that's willing to be that advocate for housing, for industrial, for jobs, for development by and large. And a community that's not development is dying. We have to have these things, but that doesn't make anyone feel better. They always want it to develop over there, not here. And I end up in these battles. I end up in these talks time and time again. And it is hands down the most mentally taxing thing I do. And I'll leave these hearings and you're just so deflated. You're just so over it. There's so much anger and there's lies and it's just so mean. I was talking with one of our elected officials who opted not to run again. Her and I actually did one of our little podcasts around this about how hard it is to get people to run for office because it's gone far from being healthy dissent and it's gotten mean and personal. And when it gets mean and personal, again, much like what we've talked about earlier, we're losing sight of our why. We're losing sight of what we're wanting to accomplish. And then guess what? It just turns off and it just turns into facts and figures because conversation no longer has any meaning. It's just one side yelling at another side and nobody's really sitting there to listen.
Yeah. So I want to take this now outside of the boardroom and the meeting room. And when you walk into the house, like, how are you dealing with that? Because there's nothing worse than one being, I don't know what it's like to be, I feel like I have a bad day if 10 people are angry at me or, one person's angry at me, but 600 people that have questioned your manhood, your integrity, all these things of who you are. And you try to put out there in the world that this is who I'm great. I mean, you probably had some people come out and say, hey, he's for this. And that makes him a bad father as well. Like, you've probably had a lot of just overcoming the haters. And then you come into the house and now you've got all this stress. And so talk about how are you able to work through that moment and then put on the best version of yourself? Or are you even putting on the best version of yourself when you get there? Like, give me the real talk here.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those things that's taken time. I'm in my 15th year of this work, and I could tell you in those first 4 or 5 years, I definitely didn't wear it well. And in fact, some of my reactions, I had one of my city colleagues tell me I was kind of a hothead. And that hit home. And it was one of those things, one of those like dynamic changers, because I was letting them get me so emotional in the meetings that I was reacting in a way that I wasn't proud of. And I'm a big dude too, G, as you know, like I don't need to be a hothead because then it just becomes bullying. That's what we're going to be accused of. We're big guys. We don't get called hotheads. We get called bullies. It's not intentional. It's just, that's our statute. That's what we do. That was one of those pivotal moments of me of like, all right, I got to change my approach. I can't let this get to me to such an emotional level. And I go back to that why. I'm very, very principled on the what I do and why I do it. And if we're going to put ourselves out there, that we're very firm in our principles and foundations so that I can know that I'm standing on a principle that matters. I'm standing on something that's going to have positive impact. And I'm going to stand on something that, look, if everybody in the world hates me for it, at least I know intrinsically that I'm doing what is right and something that I can stand beside and say, I'm proud to do that. I'm proud to take that position. I'm proud of how we're doing that. But when I come through the doors, I think it's twofold because we've talked to some of our other podcasts, and I think you might have even referenced it about Madden and video games. Like, dude, that's my outlet. 100%. The ladies know, like, I'll be like, I got to go downstairs. Like, they know I just got to have a couple hours to play my PlayStation. And that is my decompression. I don't even know the games I'm playing. Like, it's background noise. It's what allows me to decompress mentally. And then usually after an hour or two of that, the mind resets and I'm able to get back to the other task of life. As the kids have gotten more into their activities, getting to watch my oldest perform in her theater and her plays and her music, getting to watch my youngest out there on the soccer field, it has the same impacts and effects as the video games do. And it's good reminders, like when you get to watch them accomplish their dreams and work hard towards it, that these types of screaming sessions, these types of obstacles and challenges, they don't define who you are. They're just part of your story. It doesn't make me any different, doesn't make what they're saying true. It really doesn't even have impacts on the outcomes. It just becomes that divide in that larger community story. And your community probably gets a little smaller because of it. I have found that. I'm somebody that's got quite a broad reach. I've got a lot of people that I know. But when you look at my inner circle, it's probably far smaller because of these types of situations. To get me to really open up is tough. It's not something I'm going to do a lot. I mean, even around the social circles, like I know when we go out, people love to hear the stories and hear the inside scoop because I've got it. But I also know that with that privilege comes a responsibility to be a little quieter. And so I probably rarely open up to larger crowds. It takes a lot of one-on-one to get me to talk.
Yeah. So it's almost like you're leveraging, not leveraging, probably a bad word, but utilizing family time and cherishing it as a recovery of sorts.
Yeah, 100%.
I hate to use the term recovery because those that work out and most of us don't put a lot of time in recovery, even though it's probably the most valuable thing that we can do. But that's really good to hear you say that. At any point during this, do you find yourself like, hey, I'm going to go run an ultra marathon on a broken leg, or, hey, while I'm already sleep deprived and getting yelled at, let's just double down and wake up at 4 a.m. and do all these things? Any of that going on?
Yeah, look, again, if I can get that 30-minute workout at 7:30 in the morning, I'm pretty happy right now, G.
Hey man, it's back to the three-legged stool. Well, hey, I enjoyed that, man. That was great. I actually, we need to catch up more and pick up on some more of those stories. I'm sure you've got a million stories to tell about that. You versus 600, that's super intimidating. Like, God, man, I can't imagine that. But appreciate you sharing that. So what we'll do here is we'll wind down quarter 3, and when we come back, we'll take a quick break. We'll close it down in the fourth quarter, and we'll just do a quick recap of everything that we talked about. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back. All right. Hey, guys, thanks for coming back. All right, we're going to close this down here. JT, we had a lot of good conversation about mental toughness, what it actually means, and how to balance that with being a dad, and busted some myths. So you didn't necessarily say this, but I'm going to kind of wrap up what I heard and taking notes here on kind of what you put out in your stories. But in a lot of things that we covered in the upfront, at the core, there's a lot of truth to what the principle is. It's how it's gotten socialized and viralized and taken in a wrong direction. But just to kind of give some application to those that skipped all the way to Q4 just to pick it up, what I know is being consistent pays off way more than being extreme. And that's showing up at 80 to 90% every stinking day than saying, I'm going to go 110% and do everything all in one day, and then you don't do it again for another 2 weeks. You mentioned strategic recovery, specifically your family time, which I thought was a really great reference. So often they talk about rest, sleep, recovery as a form of weakness, and it's not. It literally is how muscle grows when you work out. You don't do it in the gym, you do it outside of the gym. Same kind of concept here. Focused attention was another one that I took from what you said, especially when you mentioned being family, and it's kind of being where your feet are, right? Being fully present instead of being mentally somewhere else, thinking about the 600 that are after you, or thinking about the DOD. Baby, dongs over toted. That's going to get out. You know it. It's already been out. We're bringing it back. 10-year anniversary. Having emotional awareness. You covered this, but it's feeling fear but stepping inside of it and stepping into it and acknowledging that it exists, and it's probably something that you're going to have to overcome. But it's not just completely ignoring it and going full bravado on it. It's acknowledging that it's something that we probably need to have a strategy and get after. And then we'll put the last one, ruthless prioritization. And that's having the courage to say no to things that may not be what really need to involve your attention, saying yes to things that do require your attention. And that's when people put that down, it's like, that's easy. Or yeah, they don't understand my situation. But it goes back to our caller from Dothan, Alabama. I wonder if he saw the big balloon drop. Prioritization, like what's most important to you, and that's, I would say, if you don't know that, sit with that. JT, anything that I left out in that, was that kind of good note taking, man? I tried to zone in on your stories there, especially Donks Over Dothan there.
Yeah, you got to prioritize. That's that ruthless prioritization there. No, I think you got it. You got it really good. One more point that always remember, just to control that which you can control. There's so much outside of our control. There's so many things that we can't influence, nor should we influence. And control what you can control, and I promise the rest of it will follow as it should.
So JT, before we go official closer and talk about what we got coming up next week, what is just one truth about mental toughness that we haven't covered that men need to hear right now?
What I would say is it's not one size fits all. Find what works for you. Find what allows you to take that release and to have that reset and get back to your why. And don't think that any of these books, any of these other people that are selling you the answer really know your answer. Take the time to find what works for you.
If you're following these hustle culture accounts, if you're listening and you have all these self-help books that are full on promise and fail to deliver, I want you to delete those. At least start with deleting one, or maybe getting rid of a book, whatever it needs to take, and replace whatever time you were spending investing in that, and replace it with 10 minutes of focused energy towards your kid or your spouse, or maybe just actually not doing anything and just mentally recovering. I want you to drop it in the comments if you do that, or send us a DM. You guys can figure out how to reach us, but tell us about what happened and if you saw any relief from that. So be very interested to hear it. Would love to hear from you. And then JT, next week, if you want to tune in, I'll let you, man, but we'll recap it to you. We got a very special guest in studio. We've got a recently fresh out of it, retired Special Forces Green Beret who's going to talk about mental toughness and what it actually means. And this dude is one of the most humble human beings I have ever been around. You can't get better than these Special Forces guys, man. Like, these guys are the tip of the spear. You got to love them. So I'm really excited to bring that episode to you. We're going to cut that next week and it'll be out here. But JT, huge thanks to you. You helped a lot of people today in sharing what a true hustler looks like. Guys, this has been the Fit Fat Dad podcast, and reminding you that when the father leads, the family wins. Thank you, JT.